Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. I've always prided myself on being a good neighbor. I live in a spacious area with lots of land, but I always made an effort to know my neighbors and be friendly with them. However, there was one neighbor who made it difficult for me to maintain that mindset. Her name was Sarah, and she had always been a bit of an oddball. She didn't seem to have any pets, but one day I noticed a massive amount of hay piled up on her property for seemingly no reason at all. I didn't think too much of it at the time, but in retrospect it was a sign of the strange decisions she would continue to make. It wasn't until Sarah purchased a giant camper that things really started to go downhill. At first I thought that maybe she was planning to take it on a long vacation, but instead it just sat on her property, unused. Then, one day, I saw her driving it onto my property and setting up camp. I was surprised, to say the least, and asked her to leave, but she refused, claiming that it was her campsite and that I should deal with it. I couldn't believe it. How could someone be so brazen and entitled? Over the next few weeks, Sarah continued to park her camper on my property, and I couldn't do anything to stop her. I tried calling the police, but they could only do so much since she was technically my neighbor and close to the property line. Sarah was taking advantage of me and using my property as her own personal campground. It was frustrating and infuriating, but I didn't know what to do. Then one night, things took a dangerous turn. Sarah decided to throw a party on my property. She and her friends were drinking, dancing, and playing music. At first, I thought it was harmless, but then I noticed smoke rising from the area where they had started a bonfire. I quickly realized that the fire was out of control and spreading quickly. I called the fire department and watched as they rushed to put out the flames. Thankfully, the fire was put out quickly, but not before it caused some damage to my property. Sarah and her friends had caused a lot of destruction, and I was livid. I called the police, and when they arrived, they finally took Sarah into custody. She was charged with trespassing, arson, and destruction of property. For a while, things were quiet, and I thought that maybe Sarah had learned her lesson. But then, a few weeks later, I woke up to find her camper parked on my property again. I couldn't believe it. After everything that had happened, she was still trying to use my land as her own personal campground. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called a towing company and had her camper towed away. It was an expensive undertaking, but I felt that it was worth it to finally get rid of Sarah's presence on my property. Update. A few months after the incident, I received a letter from Sarah's lawyer. She was suing me for having her camper towed. I was surprised and a little frightened, but I knew that I had done nothing wrong. I hired a lawyer and prepared to defend myself in court. The trial was long and grueling, but in the end, the judge ruled in my favor. Sarah was forced to pay for the damages she had caused to my property and the cost of towing her camper. She also received a hefty fine for her reckless behavior. I felt relieved and vindicated. Finally, justice had been served. Looking back on the whole ordeal, I realized that Sarah's behavior had been escalating for quite some time. The hay on her property was just the beginning. I should have been more observant and spoken up sooner. I also realized that I shouldn't have tried to handle the situation on my own. I should have contacted a lawyer and taken legal action against Sarah earlier. In the aftermath of the trial, Sarah moved away, and I never saw her again. I felt a sense of relief, but also a sense of sadness. Despite everything that had happened, I didn't want to see anyone lose their home or livelihood. But ultimately, Sarah had brought all of this upon herself. The experience taught me a valuable lesson about standing up for myself and not letting others take advantage of me. It also taught me that sometimes legal action is necessary to protect my property and my rights as a homeowner. Nowadays, I make sure to keep a watchful eye on my property and my neighbors, and I'm not afraid to speak up if I see something that's not right. I've also become more involved in my community, attending neighborhood meetings and getting to know my neighbors better. It's important to me to maintain a sense of camaraderie and goodwill in our area, and I'm glad to be doing my part to make that happen. In the end, while the experience with Sarah was frustrating and difficult, it helped me to grow and become a stronger, more assertive person, and for that I'm grateful. The next one is a pro-revenge story. Sometime around 2002, my wife and I moved into an 1,100 square foot condominium with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. We were very fortunate to get this condominium as the second owner. And we paid only $114,000, $6,000 more than the original price. Our condo was on the 3rd floor, and all rooms were carpeted throughout the condo, with only one small 4x4 square of linoleum inside the front door to the outside breezeway. This will become important later. And yes, even the bathrooms, kitchen, and dining room were carpeted. The front door opened to a large open space with vaulted ceilings, with the great room to the left and the dining room and kitchen to the right. The kitchen area was separated from the great room with a wall that had a cutout over the kitchen sink, and we had a long hallway directly going out of the great room to all the bedrooms and straight in front of the front door. We got to know some of the neighbors and got along well with most of them. The neighbors directly below us were a young couple that was attending university and were nice and cordial with us. Shortly after they graduated, they rented out their condo to her brother and his college friends. The brother was a decent guy, and we mostly had no problems except for one of his birthdays where their music and boisterous conversations and happy birthdays, etc. kept us up until 4:30 a.m. in the morning. My wife and I returned the favor by blasting our music the very next morning at 8 a.m., but we talked a couple of weeks later and all had a laugh about it and never had any real problems after that. Between 2004 and 2006, we changed all the flooring in the kitchen and dining room to ceramic tile, including the area in front of the front door, to avoid having to pay for carpet cleaning in the dining or kitchen area due to spills or our young daughter throwing food on the floor from her high chair. In 2007, our cordial neighbors sold their condo to an older newlywed couple, late 20s to early 30s. Now, if anyone has lived in between a first and a third floor condo or apartment, you will know that it is the worst place to be if you expect silence. With kids or music, you will always have some noise that filters through the floor or ceiling. I don't know what they were thinking or expecting when they moved in there. I was blissfully unaware that the condo had been sold until one day about a month later, I brought home a powered subwoofer and hooked it up to my home theater sound system around 6 p.m. I promptly put on an action flick with some big explosions and sat down to enjoy the new and improved immersive sound. After a little bit of gunfire and 2 explosions, I hear the doorbell, ding dong. I get up and immediately hear ding dong again. I walk the 5 feet to my front door and open it to see my entitled neighbor, I'll call her Karen, standing on my doorstep. Me, hi, can I help you? Very agitated Karen. My husband and I are trying to enjoy a quiet and peaceful dinner. Can you please turn down whatever show you are watching? We can hear everything that's going on. Me, oh, sure, sorry about that. She turned around and walked away. I closed the door, turned the subwoofer down a ways and the main volume down a bit and thought nothing of it. Shortly after the next round of gunfire and explosions, I hear the ding-dong and then some rapid-fire knocking at my door. I paused my movie and then I opened the door to see Karen again. Me, hi, what can I do for you? Karen, we can still hear everything from your show. You need to turn it down now. At this point, I was a little fed up with her crap and decided to call her on it. Me, you say you can hear everything. Can you give me some of the last dialogue you heard? Karen, I don't know. I just know you are watching XX show. She was totally wrong. Me, no, I'm actually watching YYY movie, and here are the last 3 lines of dialogue. And I gave her those lines. Me, it seems you can't hear my movie as well as you are claiming. Karen, with blazing eyes and red in the face. I don't care. It's too loud. You need to turn it down. Me, actually, the noise ordinance says I don't have to turn it down until 10 p.m. Karen, getting huffy. Fine, I guess my husband and I will have to go out to eat to get some peace and quiet. Me, in my most cheerful voice and waving. Have a good night. I then turned my subwoofer up a little and the main volume back up to its previous level and enjoyed the rest of my movie. The neighbors did end up going out that night for dinner or whatever. At our next HOA meeting, Karen stands up and complains long and loud about the noise, how she can hear kids jumping on the carpeted floor, we had a 4-year-old, and crying, we had a new baby, and hear us walking up and down our hallway and hear our music and movies and TV shows, and how the Hispanic neighbors on the first floor play their music on Saturday mornings so loud they can't sleep in and argue so loud they can hear every word, etc., ad nauseum. This went on for 6 months. Every time she complained, the HOA told her, if it's between the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., we can do nothing. If it's after 10 p.m. and before 8 a.m., you can call the police. And then the HOA would send out a letter by US mail asking everyone to be cognizant of their neighbors and laying out the local city noise ordinance. I finally stopped attending the HOA meetings after month 3 of the same bullcrap. She never failed to visit at least once or twice in the week after these notices, and twice she taped them to my door. I also learned during this time that they were members of our church and had actually been assigned to visit us each month. They never did. Cue the pro-revenge. Around the 6-7 month mark of her constant complaints and harassment, and even a couple of visits from some very apologetic police officers after 11 p.m. at night, they said they could hear nothing outside of my condo door, we decided to upgrade our flooring. We knew this would inflame our entitled neighbor, but we didn't care as we were tired of the constant stream of complaints from them. We chose to extend the entry tile all the way from the front door, down the long hallway to the master bedroom door, and we wanted to tile the bathrooms as well. We also went with a light coffee-colored bamboo hardwood in our great room. So demolition first. We tore out the carpet and tack strips and pried the base molding trim off the walls. As I'm removing the last of the nails from the walls and subfloor, about noon on a Saturday, wouldn't you know it, bang, bang, bang from the front door. Me. Yes? Karen, can you keep it down? I'm trying to have a pampered chef party. Me. Sure. I promptly finished pulling or driving in nails, and then proceeded to bang my hammer all over the subflooring like I was driving loads of new nails for the next hour, and made sure to turn on my stereo to the local hard rock station and turn it up for the next 4 hours. FYI, the one Saint Floor neighbors were already blaring some great mariachi music. They did this every Saturday and Sunday as they cleaned their condo from top to bottom. We then rented a hardwood floor nailer that, in addition to compressor noise and too loudly driving a nail into the flooring and subfloor, also had to be struck with a large dead blow hammer. Bang, bang, bang. It took us 3 days to install the coffee-colored bamboo hardwood flooring in the great room, and we were sure it was driving Karen absolutely batty. We ended up installing an awesome tile inlay down the hall, had tile running from the front door to the master bedroom door along the great room side of the divider wall, tile in the dining room, kitchen, and both bathrooms. We got the base molding on, more nail gun and compressor fun, and caulked. The new floors looked amazing, and the bonus was, every time a hard shoe like my daughter's favorite Sunday shoes she wore everywhere every day, or high heel, my wife chose to learn how to do everything in 4-6-inch stilettos during this time, struck the floor. It was like the impact echoed through our perfect floors. All this was due to our neighbor complaining. It was also in preparation to sell our condo as we had grown out of it by this time. We sold it within 1 month of listing at $160,000. During closing, the real estate agent for the new owners told us that the floors absolutely sold this place. We also sold at the very top of the real estate boom right before the real estate market crashed. We later learned from some of our neighbors that within 9 months of our selling our condo, the 2 ND floor entitled neighbors moved out and sold their condo for $30,000 less than we had, and took about an $8,000 loss, and sent a letter of complaint to the HOA stating their condo was unlivable because of the noise from our incredible floors. The next one is a petty revenge story. In my city, there is a pub attached to a donut shop that serves the best donuts in the city, which always causes a long line. As it is attached to a pub, it does not close until 9 p.m. due to the solid flow of business. Anyway, my girlfriend and I got a serious craving for some snacks, so we decided to head to the donut shop and arrived there around 8:30 p.m. by car. Now, there are only 3 parallel parking spots a little up the street from the place, and they are all 15-minute spots that are usually full. We looked up the street and saw a free spot, so my girlfriend pulled a little ahead of the car in front of the spot, turned on her indicator, and began backing into the parking spot when a little white Vespa driving behind us whipped into the spot. I rolled down our window and called out to the driver, "Excuse me, we were just backing in." The driver seemed to be a pretty univ student who shrugged her shoulders and called out to me, "Sorry, first come, first serve," while she and her friend shared a good laugh. My girlfriend suggested we just get donuts another time, and I told her she could drop me off here. I would buy the donuts since I knew what she liked and she could loop around. She agreed, and I hopped out of the car, past the little white Vespa where the girls were still gathering their things, and headed to the shop. As always, the line was super long for donuts, and since this was the last batch, the donuts were slim pickings. The girls were behind me, looking at the 5 or so different flavors that were left, talking about which ones were best and which they hadn't had yet. I heard one of them jokingly mention, "Thank God we got a parking spot," and they burst out laughing. I got to the front of the line and when asked for my order, requested 2 dozen donuts, which were every last one remaining. The girls behind me didn't listen to what I ordered, but eyebrows of confusion started to form on their faces as they slowly saw each donut loaded into the boxes and their options dwindle. One of them, the driver, in desperation, asked the baker who was loading them in, "What, you're not even going to save a few for us, though?" To which I turned around and said, "Sorry, first come, first serve." She honestly looked like she had just simultaneously solved a movie mystery and crap her pants. It's difficult to put into words, but truly an expression I can never forget. The next one is an entitled people story. Cast, me, myself and I, Nels, old man, though he doesn't speak, Harriet, Karen. My husband and I rent a display space in an antique consignment store for our collective side hustles. I quilt and crochet. My husband sells custom die-cast cars and diorama supplies. Every few weeks we go in and restock our space. This store is very large and can be a bit of a maze, and the store has designated rest stops throughout the aisles. One is across from our space. The store does not provide mobility aids for customers, so it is a BYO policy if you need a walker or wheelchair. I'm a wheelchair user as I'm paralyzed from an L2 SCI. My husband and I were at the store restocking the space. My husband had just left to take one of our totes out to our van, leaving me in our space sorting through my tote that has the baby sets I make. When I hear someone huffing behind me, I didn't really pay too much attention to it, thinking that someone might have been taking a break at the rest stop. I was just finishing laying out my sets on the table in our space when the person at the rest stop decided to talk to me. "Do you know if the store has wheelchairs for people to use?" I look up from my task and see an elderly couple across from our space. The old man is standing next to the bench, looking annoyed, while the woman has flopped on the bench in an "I can't take another step" kind of way. I was concerned that she might have been having a medical issue as she was rather plump. "Are you okay?" I ask, about to tell her or her partner to use the phone above the bench to reach the staff desk for help. "This store is too big," Harriet exclaims. "I can't walk anymore." Me. "The store has a chair for medevac use. One of the employees could bring it to you if you need help leaving." Harriet. "But we're not done shopping." Me. "I don't think they have wheelchairs to borrow. They have had issues with rowdy kids riding mobility scooters, so they do not provide them. But if you use the phone above you, you can ask a staff member. Just dial 1 and it will connect you to the staff desk." There is a sign next to the phone that states this. Harriet seems to be thinking about her options, so I go about my work. Nels wanders down the aisle, possibly looking for an escape route. Harriet. "What about the wheelchair you're sitting in?" Me. "This is my personal wheelchair. It doesn't belong to the store." Harriet. "Can I borrow it?" Me. "What? Surely she's not asking to take my chair to go shopping." Harriet. "I want to use the wheelchair. You're young enough that you could stand to walk for a bit. I'll bring it back." Me. "Ma'am, I cannot stand at all. I've been a paraplegic since I was 12. This wheelchair is not store issued. It's my personal property that cost a lot of money. If you call the staff, maybe they can let you use the medical chair, or maybe they know of one someone has in their space that you can buy. But I will not give you my chair, and I cannot help you." At this point, I have rolled out of our space. I decided to head towards the vendor door and just leave. Rumor has it Harriet is still sitting on the bench waiting for someone to give her a wheelchair. The next one is an entitled parents story. So I've just come back from a coach trip from the UK to Disneyland Paris. It was a wonderful trip apart from one family who decided they could do whatever they wanted with no consequences. To set the scene, my 2 friends and I had just arrived at the bus stop and were waiting for the coach. In front of us was a family of 4 adults and 3 children. A young girl around the age of 10, a boy also around the age of 10, and a teenage boy were sitting on the floor and attempting to play a card game. However, the girl was screaming at the top of her lungs, telling the other kids how to play the game. The adults tried to intervene once, got sworn at by the child, and then gave up. My friends and I exchanged glances before resorting to sending each other memes silently voicing our discontent. Luckily, we were seated at the front of the coach and the family was at the back. We could still hear the girl yelling all the way, but we let it slide because, hey, we're going to Disneyland and they're probably just excited. We went on to have a wonderful couple of days in Disneyland, completely forgetting that this family even existed, until it was time to come home. You see, dear reader, we are broke, so we had booked a coach that left Disney at 8 p.m., arriving back in London at 4:30 a.m. It's a given that you'd want to sleep on the coach. Well, as we waited for our coach to come and collect us, there we were reminded of that child's piercing screams and shrieks as she ran around the car park and in front of cars, while the adults once again did nothing. My friends and I exchanged worried glances, but it was only the beginning. Once on the coach, people started pulling out neck pillows and blankets, ready to attempt to sleep, but not that family. They talked loudly about their trip and complained that the coach driver hadn't put the radio on for us. People were already grumbling, but the family paid them no mind. When we reached Calais, it got worse. The driver asked for a volunteer to collect everyone's passports and bring them to the front. One of the adults, and the girl's mother, volunteered and had to sit at the front with the driver while sorting the passports. Well, the child decided that was an invitation to run up and down the aisle between her parents before loudly demanding that her mother sing Happy Birthday in Welsh. This was at midnight. After border control had checked our passports, the mother decided to hand some of them to her children, but that wasn't good enough for the little girl who kept screaming at her mother to give her more. Apparently no was not a word she could understand, and she simply kept screaming. Even when people stated they were not comfortable with children handling their passports, the kids still got to hand them out. And then we finally boarded the ferry at 1:35 a.m., ready for a quiet crossing. We were wrong. Initially, my friends and I had sat in an area with a kids' play area. We quickly realized and relocated to a quieter area of the ship so we could try and grab some sleep. People around us were sprawled out on benches with blankets over their heads, and mothers had sleeping children in their laps. We found a quiet corner and started to doze off. Then we heard it. That same piercing shrieking, all from that girl. They were running up and down the length of the ship, shouting and shrieking as they went. People were being startled awake every single time they went by. Other children were beginning to cry because they were tired. The teenage boy was literally winding up the younger two, making them shout even more. The adults of the group were absolutely nowhere to be seen. Eventually, I snapped. After a particularly piercing shriek, I yelled, "Quiet, please! It is 2 o'clock in the morning and people are trying to sleep." Several other murmurs of agreement surrounded me. They went silent, looked at me, and ran off. I knew what was coming. We all knew. In marched one of the adults. Not the mother, just another one of the adults. "What did you say to the kids?" she demanded, loudly of course. "I said quiet, please. There are people trying to sleep." I gestured to the people groggily emerging from their blankets to see what the commotion was. "If you've got a problem, speak to an adult. Don't shout at kids." "Well, where were you?" "Down there," she points. "They were at the opposite end of the ship. So why weren't you with them? They're hyper. Kids are going to be hyper. Again, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and people are trying to sleep. You should have come and talked to us." "How was I supposed to know who you were or where you'd be?" "Whatever, just don't shout at kids." And then they left. Was it the end? Oh no, they continued their shrieking and running. When we attempted to find the adults as they had requested, they had moved and were nowhere to be found again. The girl also tried to stare me out a couple of times. I think she was trying to intimidate me, which is laughable. Eventually, the ferry trip came to an end, and I waited until the last possible second to get back on the coach so that they wouldn't have to walk past me. I was thanked several times by fellow ferry passengers in both French and English for my attempts to shut those kids the hell up. I do wonder how much of a problem it would have been if I woke their kids up at 2 a.m. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.